The first thing you need to do is make a dough for 1 loaf of white bread. If you are shy of yeast and have not been very successful at baking at home, you can try a hot roll mix, or, although Grandma would not approve, you can probably use a loaf of frozen bread dough. So we use mystery meat in our house because that's what Grandma used. We save leftover roast beef and leftover roast pork. Ham will always work too. And we save it in the freezer until we have enough, and we grind it up. Grandma used the old meat grinder, and until recently that's what I used too, but today was the maiden voyage for the KitchenAid. Because the meat I've ground up is very lean, I'm going to start by melting 2 or 3 tablespoons of butter in the skillet. Okay, I'm going to add the meat that I ground up earlier. This is probably over a pound, maybe a pound and a half. I'm going to salt and pepper that fairly heavily. If you don't have mystery meat around and you don't eat a lot of roast or steak or other big pieces of meat that would give you leftovers, and you're not too concerned about the sanctity of your grandma's sainted mother or grandmother's recipe, you can use a pound of hamburger here. Just make sure it's good quality. I'm adding in some onions. I diced about half of a red onion here. I imagine this is probably about half a cup, but you can add more or less to suit your own taste. And now that that's ready and the onions look soft and it's brown, and I'm going to add my cabbage. This is probably half of a small cabbage, maybe just a little bit less than half of a small cabbage, but you might like more or less, and feel free to adjust as to your own taste. And I'm going to mix that in really well. I'm just going to put the lid on and turn the heat down a little bit and let this cabbage steam until it's wilted. The cabbage has been steaming for probably 15 minutes, a little longer than I expected. You can just check the cabbage and wait till it looks steamed. At this point, it'd be a good idea to taste it. Add more salt and pepper as needed. With the filling done, I've taken half of my bread dough and I'm going to roll it out. The thickness you roll it out to depends on really how bready you want your finished Bierocks. Now that I have my half of the dough rolled out, I'm going to cut it in squares. And the size of these squares depend on how big that you want your Bierocks. And some of the ones on the end won't be squares, but really doesn't make much difference. Okay, now I've got my filling ready. And I use a cookie scoop because it's just easier, but a spoon will do. It's hot, and I've preheated my oven to 350 so it's ready to go. So I'm going to put 1 big scoop of filling in the middle of each square. And if I had bigger squares and I was making big Bierocks, I would probably use 2 scoops, but we like small Bierocks. Now I'm going to form these into buns. So the way our family does it is we make little, we call them diapers. I bring up opposite ends and pinch, then bring up the other ends and pinch, and then go around to each crease, pinch it shut, tuck in anything sticking out, and there's one small Bierock. You can also bring up your ends, pinch it, and then turn it over and make something that looks like a small bun. This is probably what most people are used to, one that looks like a bun. Oven is set to 350 degrees. And I can put 2 pans in at a time. And it's just important to switch the pans halfway through baking. I'm going to bake these for about 10 minutes. And they are coming out of the oven. Because I rolled the dough thin and I made the Bierocks small, they only took 12 minutes to bake. But if I had made bigger Bierocks or rolled the dough thicker, then it could have taken as long as 20 to 30 minutes to bake them. I'm going to let them cool off for a few minutes and then we'll try one. Break one of these open and you can see that the bread is cooked and the filling is tasty.